All right. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Wags and Fresh podcast. He's John Fresh. I'm Justin Wagner. And today's episode is brought to you by the word why. So, why is coming in?
Yeah.
You can have some of mine.
I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Why is it's a big word. You know what I mean? Like, it's intimidating sometimes, I think, for people.
The one thing we know for sure is it's the number one question or tool for anybody trying to figure out their existence, their value. Everybody uses it to try to get that extra gear out of people. Mm-hmm. You know, if we could just tap into your why.
Right. Yeah.
Then you'll show up each morning and you'll
solve all your problems.
Purpose and yeah.
Which it can do all those things.
Of course.
It can.
It's your why.
But I think as we were talking earlier, it doesn't mean that it's the only thing that can get you through the day or motivate you to do something. We're still figuring out the why of this. Why are we doing this? So,
right, it wasn't even a question that we ever had to ask. It was a question that other people had asked
continuously.
Is why are you doing this? And we don't know why, but each step along the way seems enjoyable. It seems like a better thing than watching a TV show or listening to somebody else's why.
Right. Yeah.
Or watching somebody else's why, or watch somebody else catch a why, or throw a why, or tackle a why.
And you see, I would say, the more people than not try to sort of piggyback on somebody else's why, right? Mm-hmm. Because they go, that's good. That's a great why. I'm going to go ahead and sign up for that.
Yeah.
And then, the whys come from, other things, experiences and motivations that you have as an individual, not necessarily because it's a great idea. It might be a great idea, but if it's not a great idea for you, then you're not going to get the motivation.
I'm not downplaying these whys, but you can't just throw things out or you can, family and other things, because you have to really know what that means for you, because having a family as a why is a lot different than specifically knowing what the needs of your family are and really having them be your why and not just your stepping stool for more success for yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I ask questions like that in interviews, especially as the interview process goes along. Not necessarily the word why, but what are your motivations, things like that. And one of my favorite questions I ask people a lot at the end of an interview is, what's their dream job? And I'm trying to tap into what their interests are, what motivates them, what drives them. And unfortunately, to your point, a lot of the times when you get into conversations with people about that, they give you these sort of standard, static, answers that kind of pop up. And of course, family's what motivates a lot of people. But how does that matter to you? And I don't really probe that deep after that answer. I usually want them to give one of the best answers I ever got, even though I was interviewing for a sales job and that had nothing to do with the landscaping business. This person's answer was he wants to start his own company. His dream job is to start his own landscaping business, and he gave me all the reasons why. And what it allowed for me to understand was, that this person has passion for something and is connected to something that hopefully can translate to what we're trying to accomplish but if a sort of static, generic answer that is, the worst answer somebody can give me when I say, what's your dream job? When they say, this is my dream job. And, well, that just seems manufactured for an interview. That makes no sense. Mm-hmm. You've had all these life experiences, all these outside interests and hobbies, and yet for some reason this job and selling, whatever it is your dream job. I'm not saying that it can't be anybody's dream job. There may be somebody's dream job, but it just seems very disingenuous. Mm-hmm. Whereas it needs to be something that is real to you. And mine's changed. My dream job's changed over. I used to think I wanted to be the general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then I realized that once you kind of see behind the curtain, it doesn't become as interesting or as fun to watch. And I'm sure that being the general manager of any professional organization, you look at the game differently in a way that you're not a fan anymore. You're not just using it for entertainment. It's now this business and it's analytics and all these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just realized that that's not what I wanted from that. You know, I wanted it to be just something that I watched, you know.
And what I've learned from why is the transition from doing something just because you enjoy it and you feel like it's making you a better person, and actually it teaching you what you're doing, being it teaching you something about your why, versus being in a job that you have to find a why so you can manufacture some type of energy and life to do something that maybe doesn't have that power on its own.
Yeah.
So what I like about having the question asked, and what I liked about not having an answer, and what I liked about just the process that it's doing for myself and making, you know, what it's doing for me as a husband or a father, as a person or as a human being, is that I don't need a why right now. I just know I just need to show up and put things on and get some thoughts out and work through some things for myself and hopefully offer something of value. But it's very interesting to be doing things, and if we really think about it, it's all the things that are special anyway. Like, you don't have to sit down, kids don't have to sit down and say, why are we playing Cowboys and Indians? You know, why are we going to go play baseball today? You know, why are we going surfing? Why are we going for a bike ride?
Right.
What's my motivation? So, you know, when you tap into things that you can have enjoyment on and have a positive benefit for you and those around you, and it doesn't need any manufactured energy to excite you about it, the why sort of becomes just part of what it already is. And it's something that you give to, and it's something that is giving to you. And, you know, ultimately, you know, some things don't need to be defined in such detail. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of seminars that have turned people's lives around where they spend whole weekends, you know, writing down their why. And I think it's great to know about yourself and what motivates you. But I still think there's a person behind the why that has to light that why up every day, or else it's just going to be a better sentence than they've been living off of before. Sure. Well, so that's cool.
And I think that you have to allow for there to be this, you know, almost at times a reveal, right? There becomes a reveal later on, you know, hey, this has been the why. We've been doing this for however long we've been doing that, and that's the why. And it becomes something that I think, and I remember one of my first management jobs, I was in the restaurant business, and I had a lot of college students, right? And so a lot of the responses I got when I was trying to get them to do their job better was, well, this isn't going to be my career. You know, I don't really care about this. And so I don't really care if I do this well. They didn't say that specifically, but that was really what they implied. And I remember replying to people all the time. I said, do you think that magically you're going to get this dream job that you think that you're going to get because you finished your schooling? And you might. But you're learning habits, you know, now that are going to help you with understanding how important those things and that why will be later on. But just to sit around and wait for the why and do all of the rest of your life sort of half-assed, for a lack of a better term, will not give you the proper habits and won't allow for that why to reveal itself in the proper way when you do get that job.
To piggyback off that, after I've trashed why for a while,
I'm on a 180.
I mean, the one thing is, you know, because it matters. You know, it doesn't have to be where it can be, but mine recently is, you know, because it matters.
Right.
Because everything matters. Because how you do everything matters. And it's just an interesting word, and you know, so many people have done so many things with that word. You know, so many programs have been built off that word.
Yep.
And you know, but sometimes when you ask the people, you know, who you're interviewing after all this stuff has happened, it was just something they enjoyed doing. I mean, any professional athlete, I mean, up till when do they need a why? Like, at what point do they need a why?
Right.
Other than the mornings they don't feel like going to the gym to get that extra gear, because they may have been talented so long that they just dominated, so they didn't really need a why.
Right.
until they hit adversity.
Yeah, yeah.
And adversity and whys, that's a great relationship. That'd be something cool to think about.
Yeah, because it allows, that's where
that's the point.
Potentially,
that's where you need
blossom into something great.
Yeah.
Or at least it allows for you to be, it doesn't always happen, but it allows for that sort of honesty moment to look in the mirror and say, I don't have the why to do what's necessary to take this any further.
Yep.
I know that I had that experience with sports, and so I didn't really have the motivation. I didn't enjoy it enough to want to continue to do it. To
sacrifice a tool for adversity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it can be, I'm willing to take all this on.
Right.
And for me, I was fortunate enough to have experienced sort of a small little glimpse of what it was going to take to sort of take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. And I didn't enjoy that. And I didn't want to continue to do that and make that even, my whole life. And I don't regret that at all, because there's never been a moment where I've said to myself, I should have done this any further. Whether I would have really had an opportunity to go really far with it or not, I don't really know. There's a part of me that knows that that's not only statistically improbable, but you look up against some of the people and you're like, wow, those people were just, like, to your point, just amazing athletes, and how do you compare yourself to them? But what I also know is that there are plenty of people that make it really, really far in life, just because of determination and hard work. And again, that's the part of it that I wasn't willing to put in that would have gotten me to wherever that would have taken me. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
and I don't look at it as quitting, because I look at it as a very important part of my journey. That was
starting.
It started a whole new journey.
Yeah,
It said, hey, that's not the path I'm supposed to be taking. It's something else over here. And there was that sort of time in my life where I didn't understand. Well, if I'm not going to do that, I really spent so much of my time thinking that was going to be around this, that I didn't know what that was, and that was confusing time. But it was a very interesting growth period,
and as far as like the podcast goes, we really haven't hit adversity yet, so we haven't been challenged, with a why. But I don't think we would need a why for this podcast. We just need a why for existence, and we can just apply it to the podcast. So it's not like, so I don't think I have my life compartmentalized like that. I'm just working on me, and then wherever you apply me, my why is it matters.
Yeah, you that's another, we kind of touched on this before. You and I have a lot of differences in our life. You don't have any. Your life is completely fluid. Like, you are who you are, and then that applies to work, and that applies to your faith, that applies to your family. It applies everywhere consistently. There's not a different compartmentalized version of you here or somewhere else. Whereas I think that's what I definitely do. There's the me that I think a certain number of people know, and then there's the work me, and then I think that's pretty much it. I don't think there's any more compartmentalization. But although I would say that there probably was a time when there was probably a third or fourth, but definitely I keep that. I do blend some of it. There are certain people in work that do get a little bit of me, but but again, you guys don't see the work me.
Right.
So there's that compartmentalization. Even when I was over here last week, and after the recording, I made a few business calls, in your kitchen, and I'm sure that from your perspective, I sounded different on the phone, right? Just even the way that I talk, my kids tell me all the time, oh, that's your work voice, that's your work mode, the work language, all of that stuff is different, right? So, and I'm not even conscious of it. It's just shifting gears to that and that. And it's not I think that there was a time when, as long as I'm on purpose, that in work that's consistent enough with what I want to try to do personally, then I'm happy with that. But I don't as much. I recognize there's going to be plenty of times that it's just work. It's not. I'm not doing the same thing you are doing, which is the sort of life mission stuff that is as connected. As a matter of fact, there was a time when you and I talked about this where there was a lot of on-purpose stuff that was at work that I'm starting to take back from that and owning it on my own, and not as much apply. Not that I don't apply it at work. It's just I don't think about how can I cultivate that at work. I'd rather take it and do something like this, or do something with the kids, and keep it personal in my personal world more than my professional world. So.
You'll see this will leak out in your presentations. I mean, I mean, as much as you compartmentalize.
There's bleed over.
Yeah. There's always going to be.
Yeah, and kind of touching onto what we talked about last week. I think that if you try to tie the why into some of what we left the conversation with, I did spend some time thinking about sort of our conversation and what am I doing to be a better father, to be a better son, to deal with that sort of adversity that's in my life, that is this estrangement, and how that ties into the why. And again, I'm not at a place yet that I still understand why that's happening right now. But I did spend enough time thinking about it to recognize that I'm in a comfortable place. I'm not in an angry place. There were, which I think that those articles almost tried to stir up, but didn't stir it up, which is a good thing. I think that there were times in my life where just thinking about it would trigger all these sort of negative or frustrating thoughts that would ultimately probably end up being destructive, have some drinks at night because I'm frustrated or thinking about it or angry or upset. And I don't find that that's what's happening with this right now. So, which is something that I'm taking from it that can then maybe position, better conversation next year with them. So, and we had some interaction on Christmas Day, which doesn't always happen,
Good.
So I definitely looked at this week as being a positive progression as it relates to that. And also for me personally, I wasn't as anxious about it. I wasn't as stressed about it. I wasn't consumed by it, both negatively or positively.
So even though it's 50-50 or whatever ratio you would call it from interaction on Christmas and not interaction on Christmas, what % of your intention do you think swayed it towards interaction? The articles,
a large portion of it, I would say. It's definitely the majority of here's what's great about this whole conversation that we're having is that I could have read those articles and not brought them up. I could have read those articles, brought them up, and done nothing.
Could have read the headlines.
I could have read the headlines and kept going. Yep. But what it ultimately did was it put me in a position to say, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to do nothing, which was an option, or am I going to do something? And I chose to do something. So that without any concern about what what was going to come back. I sent out the text message, didn't care what was going to come back. I wasn't attached to it. I wasn't worried that, I wasn't going to get anything or, so for me it was just do something positive. All you can do is reach out. And
oh, so you sent a text before the interaction?
Correct.
Oh, then yeah.
Yeah. So that was all good, and where that leads remains to be seen. It doesn't matter. But I think if we would have been talking about this before I read those articles, especially about a month and a half ago, to the point where I even had to kind of tell Jesse, like, listen, I'm struggling with this issue. Like, I want to send a nasty, letter that kind of lays out my anger and frustration. And I don't know whether verbalizing that allowed for me to kind of let that go a little bit, which it probably did, but it also, this experience has really completely let that go. I don't feel that desire to write that nasty letter to say, this is why I felt this way. You did this, and all those things. Not to say that conversation will never happen.
Yeah.
But I just don't. That's gone for me right now.
And sometimes we need to trick ourselves. Like, have you ever had somebody mention something to you and you're like, yeah, and then they're like, that's like you.
Right, yeah.
So sometimes just talking about things in an unshielded way, somebody expressing something, about it, it really being about you and you're the one that's going to change the interaction without specifically talking about the topics. These little switches and channels turn, and and you see things from a different way, and it comes in from an unguarded position, so it actually gets in, because other times when we have the shield up, it bounces off. So
sure. Well, I do that so much that I analyze so much of what people say that I assume that they're always talking about me. Even when they're not. Even though I'm like, well, there's no way that they're talking about me, because they're talking about something unless they're completely managed to create a conversation structure that is also so, high level theme that I didn't even catch the connected dots, but which I'm sure is possible. But most of the time it's pretty direct. It's like sort of, this is a direct thing, but I'm putting it in this little presentation, so that way I'm really talking about you, but I want to make sure you can digest it, and then you can deal with it later. I do that all the time, you third party things all the time, and turn it into conversations that people can digest later. But I unfortunately, now that I play that game, and then I know that other people do, that I assume that it's always being played. I'm like, well, I'm overanalyzing that, but that's all right. So what about you? What about your week? How was?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just about it. It's just about taking the next step, and we were thinking about the podcast a little and trying to come up with a name and a logo, and so we sent it off to Fiverr just to get us started, and that's what they came back with, which is our starting point.
Yep.
They gave us a couple different models of things. Once again, didn't have to think about this before we got started, didn't have to figure out what the name was. We just started hitting play and talking about the things we want to work on in our lives, and as a result of that, one step after the other, things are just starting to reveal themselves. And, even though this is just some simple logo, I think it gave me a little more reason to show up today. Just having this in place and knowing that we could put this on the screen, and there's really nothing to that other than ink on a piece of paper. But if we give it value, and we do it because it matters, and we do it because that's what we said we're going to do, not knowing what content's going to come out, then I think that just goes into the fabric of who we are and our integrity, and I just think that makes us better all around. And I always like working on things that make you better in every area in your life, so that you don't have to worry about, individually, making sure that everything's being done in every area at every moment. I think when you can work on yourself in ways that build strong values, that's gonna show up whenever you show up. So
yeah, it's this exercise has been fun, and it's supposed to be fun, right? It's supposed to be part of the fun part of it. But just to see the dialogue back and forth, and the different ideas, and different thought processes, and then taking that just constantly one step further, as I said this morning in a text back and forth, it just makes it all more real. Like, to the point of this whole conversation today, is we still don't know why, but I feel like we're closer to understanding why, just based off of the seriousness of, we have something that is tangible.
I think we have more awareness of who we are last week.
Right.
More awareness of what we like, what we don't like, areas we want to work on. I mean, if you could spend an hour a week doing that, and you care about that, then it's worth it.
And that's, to your point, it's about making that time too. You have to just say to yourself, this is important enough that I'm going to take that hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours.
Friday afternoon instead of Saturday morning.
Right.
Exactly.
So, I think that the last part of this, and I think what's interesting about this being up here and being a part of this, is this also started to make me think about what it's all going to look like 12 months from now. Right? The end of the year is always that for me. It's always this sort of putting things to rest. We got a visitor? We got a guest?
I don't
know. So putting things to rest that need to be put to rest at the end of the year, but it also is, what will continue on, and then what will be different, what will be something that you can see as growth. One of the there's a lot of things you can sit back and put on that list, and we hear all those resolutions, but and that's a good process. That's something that I think people put too much weight on, and then beat themselves up if they miss a day at the gym or whatever their resolution is. when the reality is that you just need to stick with some sort of level of awareness and consistency that allows for you to say, hey, today was just not that day I went to the gym, but tomorrow I can. And if you miss your routine, it doesn't mean the whole routine and the whole experience is now somehow diminished. Last week when we were going through the sort of accountability list, who did I call? I still never called those other two people, but I could sit back and say, well, I didn't call those two people, so I should have never done it. Or I can say, but I called the other 8 people, and I did these other things that I wasn't even going to do when I decided to put that accountability list together. And so which one am I going to view? Am I going to view the list that is completed and said, look, this was started, I didn't have to do any of this? Or do I sit back and say, well, I did this list, but I didn't finish these 2?
I was watching a thing on a trainer yesterday, and one of his lists of things that a good athlete needs to have is empathy for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm looking forward to see where this all goes. I mean, and just to see, this is just I think a snapshot of what it could be, and I'm excited about what it looks like 12 months from now.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, I'll be going through my end of year process over the next few days, which is to sort of take that inventory of the list that I make at the beginning of every year and say, here are all the things that I've done, and or here are all the things I want to do in the coming year. And then I get to review that, and as I try to review that on a regular basis, weekly and monthly, to see what those things are that I'm doing, staying consistent with, that are adjusting, that need to be changed. And so I'll be going through that process again of reviewing everything, what needs to be changed, what things can I say, hey, I did that. Mm-hmm. My wife and I went on some pretty fun trips this year. That was fun. That was something we put down on a piece of paper to say we're going to do, and we made it happen, versus just saying that we're going to do it and then not doing it. So that's part of the process, to sort of say, hey, I finished 60% of this list, or whatever that percentage is. And then from there, start putting together the next 2019 things that I want to do, things I want to accomplish, and then go from there. That's then January 2nd. It all starts up again.
Goes around.
So it's, but that's going to be my next few days is process. That's every year. That's sort of my process. So, what about you?
Mackenzie, do you want to say anything?
No.
No.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah.
All right, good. Mine is just consistency. I think all the magic happens with consistency, and when you're doing, that's when the doors open, and just stay the course, and whatever is presented in the day, recognize it as an opportunity that you only get once. That opportunity will not come back around for the day or for the moment. There'll be a different one right in the next moment, but I want to stack every opportunity I can get and make the most of things, and sort of it's halfway in between that preparing world where I need to be in the Word, and I need to be exercising, and I need to be doing all those things, but at the same time, that's all to be as prepared as possible to be responsive to something bigger that I'm involved in, that I'm not privy to until that moment. And so to be agile and but highly trained and highly committed to that process, and being prepared for that process. And it's an exciting thing. And I was even talking to that with one of the doctors before I left, and we were talking about seeing people, and the chiropractor that sees more healing or just powerful adjustments and are just a magnet for people isn't the one that shows up because they like the results of helping people or the results of helping a lot of people. It's the ones that are taking the time to train all day long in their life to be ready when that person comes in, to give them everything they have. That's the difference maker. So these aren't just things you want. These are things that you commit your life to. And then when you show up and you're together with what God's doing at that moment, and you used everything He's given you to prepare, and you're aware and open to be ready to participate in what He's doing, that's where you're dealing with His power instead of your own.
Yeah, that's well said. I think that it's unbelievable how it is so important to sort of be focused on the preparation, but the process really ultimately. It's when that moment's presented to you of whatever is needed that you're prepared to have the consistency to, because what you're, at least what I heard you say there is be consistent in that preparation and awareness and the ability to be present to be able to help that individual in whatever way, but sort of flexible enough to say, okay, well, this particular person needs this approach, and then this particular person needs this approach, and there might be some consistency within that, but there's some flexibility in that, and to have both of those things, I think most people fall into one or the other. Either they're super rigid and there's a schedule, and that this is the only schedule, and this is the only way you do things, and there is no flexibility, or the opposite, which is everything's uber fluid. And
and one of my, I guess, areas that I need to work on is I need to know when to not say anything and give a hug.
Right.
Versus, just verbally trying to help people. And like, it leads back to, I think we may have talked about that before, which is, evaluation, recommendation, or just your presence over condemnation. What else you could be doing? What can you be doing about this?
Right.
And just, and that takes being very sensitive and very little ego and pride. And it's kind of weird. The more you prepare, what are you more likely to feel?
Yeah.
You got more going on,
exactly.
But at the same time, for you to be able to use what you've been given, you have to know that you've been given it.
Right. And let go to that.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where, to your point, it's ego takes over, that pride takes over. So, good.
Sure. Anything, Mackenzie? Happy New Year.
You got to send out a Happy New Year.
Do you like the logo?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you going to come on a show with us?
Maybe.
All right.
We got to have a fun one. I'm looking forward to the fun ones. All of our conversations tend to be a little more serious. We need to play a game or something.
I love you.
I love you too.
All right.
All right. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Take care. See you next time.